Well, that question is of very much interest to people here in Brussels, which houses the NATO headquarters, and indeed, the eyes of the world are on this meeting today. Now, in that interview mentioned in the package that Macron gave over the weekend, he had a very different tone than we've heard from other leaders in NATO, notably leaders in Eastern Europe, the US, the UK, where he said that the core values of NATO cannot be compromised. They cannot give in to Putin's demand that they should rule out NATO accession for Ukraine. But at the same time, they cannot expect unilateral offers from Russia without giving something themselves. Now, those comments got a lot of attention from NATO allies, particularly in Eastern Europe. They did not like the sound of that, but it should be noted that Macron had a flurry of diplomatic calls over the weekend with other NATO leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden, and the Elysee is briefing that they are on the same page and that Macron is very much in line with his partners when he goes to this meeting. The big question is, might Macron make what's seen to be concessions at this meeting that other NATO partners wouldn't like? There's two really bad potential outcomes here for him. One is that he makes some kind of deal with Putin where Putin says, okay, I'm going to remove the troops from the border, but then that deal is not accepted by NATO partners. The other nightmare scenario for him is if he comes back empty-handed and Russia chooses to humiliate him. That did happen a bit the last time when Macron and Putin had a phone call last month. In the readout from that meeting, the Kremlin chose to highlight all the things that NATO is doing wrong, and just hours later, it added more Europeans to its sanctions list. So this is a risky move for Macron, especially considering he has this presidential election coming up in April. And if this goes badly for him today, it could have a big impact on that election.
Now, Dave, Macron's trip comes as the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is actually in the United States today ahead of his own trip to Moscow and Kiev next week. And this meeting with Joe Biden today and the German Chancellor is being very closely watched as well. Why is that?
Well, it's because Germany has come in for a lot of criticism in the United States, in the UK, and Eastern Europe for not being tough on Russia here, and for Scholz kind of going AWOL during this crisis. He's been very quiet, not wanting to upset this brand new coalition government in Germany. He has refused to say categorically that if Russia invades Ukraine, that they would cancel the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that's about to be completed to bring gas under the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany, or that he would support freezing Russian companies' access to the SWIFT bank transfer system. Joe Biden will surely be pressing him to make a commitment on those two things today. So that press conference following that meeting is going to be very closely watched because the Biden administration surely wants Scholz to say something. They've been getting very frustrated by Germany's passive role in all of this. But at the same time, public support in Germany is on Scholz's side. They do not want to see an escalation here. They don't want to see anything that's going to aggrieve the situation. And a lot of people in Germany feel like the statements coming out of the US, the UK, are not helping the situation, are escalating the situation. Now, Scholz himself will go to meet with Putin next week in Moscow as well. And so the big question is, whatever happens today with this meeting between Putin and Macron is going to color that meeting next week. And a lot of NATO allies are going to be worried that Scholz might undermine whatever was discussed this week when he goes there in Moscow. President Biden is going to want to make sure that that doesn't happen and that he and Scholz are on as much of the same page as possible.
Dave, thanks for that. Dave Keating there reporting for us from Brussels.